Hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on LED lighting retrofits with Cree. 2 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm your host, Timothy Johnson. I'm the digital editor for Electrical Contractor magazine. The audio for today's presentation should be coming through your speakers or headphones. If you prefer to call in, there's a toll-free number in the event info panel. If you have other difficulties, please feel free to reach out to me using the chat window in your event panel. Also, I want to note that today's presentation is being recorded. So if you miss anything or something comes up and you have to leave, you can come back at your convenience. Finally, there's going to be a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So during the event, you can submit questions through the Q&A chat box at any time, and I'll make sure that our presenter gets to see them. Now on with the show. Our presenter is Eric Marsh. Eric is a product portfolio manager at Cree. He has over 20 years of lighting and technology marketing experience in the commercial and industrial markets. At Cree, Eric works closely with lighting agents, electrical distribution, electrical contractors, specifiers, and end customers to stay ahead of the market trends. So I want to thank everybody for attending. Now I'm going to pass it off to Eric. Eric?
Thanks so much, Tim, and thank you, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's presentation. I appreciate you being here. So, as Tim said, we're going to get started in talking about LED lighting retrofit success. So, for the program today, let's look at the learning objectives and what we're really trying to review and achieve. So, mostly we want to talk about the latest trends and the improvements and what impact that's having in the lighting market today. We also want to ensure that you avoid any pitfalls and that LED overpromise, which some people and yourselves may have experienced. We also want to provide tips for evaluating and selecting really the right lighting retrofit solution. And then also give you strategies and best practices to ensure that whatever project you're working on is a successful retrofit installation. Also give you some tips for selling lighting upgrades and how to really position those with either building owners, facility managers, and basically your customer base. So let's get started, and really let's look at the trends. And I sometimes think about LED lighting as it relates to flat panel televisions. And if you think about flat panel televisions, say 10 to 15 years ago, they were really expensive. They were the beginning of new technology that we all enjoy today. And really, if you look at it, they've gotten better and better, and the prices have come down at a pretty regular pace. I look at what I first paid for an LED, a television that was flat panel, say 10 years ago, and I look at what I just bought maybe a year ago, and the price points are tremendously lower. So there's continuous advancements in LED lighting technology overall. It's getting better and better, as I mentioned. We're looking at better quality light in general, with lower operating costs in terms of how that light actually performs and delivers energy savings, light quality, and really reliability. And so when you talk about that light efficiency in terms of lumens per watt, it's kind of like miles per gallon, which we all probably know. We're really getting more light out of the light source with less input watts and input energy. We're also able to control that light much better today. The biggest thing that's probably impacting the installed base here is the increased lifespan of LEDs. So you look at the lifetime ratings, we'll talk about that, and really the performance versus incumbent traditional technologies is really amazing. And as I talked about, the pricing has become more competitive. So that first price sticker shop that I equated with a television years ago, and when LED lighting first came to the marketplace, the price points now are really meeting paybacks that exceed traditional lighting technologies. And as I mentioned briefly, better controllability. This is really digital light, right? We're not looking at, I'm going to date myself here, but when I was a kid, you know, all the televisions and stereos had tubes, right? Well, as radios and televisions went to digital, all those things were transistors, right? And really what LED lighting is a light-emitting diode. It's basically transistor technology, but now creating light. So it allows us to control that light much better, much smoother, and really it's a digital light source, if you will. And this is all information that was just recently compiled by one of the leading market research firms, Navigant Research. And if you they're one of the leading indicators of what's really going on in the marketplace. So in general, that's kind of what's going on with LED lighting today. You can also look at some of the Department of Energy reports and look at the saturation of where LEDs are, both in internal environments and in buildings, and also street and area and parking lots as well. So why is it important, to pitch LEDs to your clients? For some of the reasons that I just talked about. But this chart really is a chart from the U.S. Department of Energy, and it really talks about energy usage and then energy expenditure with the U.S. commercial building market in average. So when you take a look at lighting there in the gold versus the other technologies that are going into a building and how much energy is actually used, roughly about 14% of an average building is going to go to energy in lighting. If you look at that expenditure, it's kind of funny. It's a little bit higher. It's at 20%. So that does say that there's efficiencies to be gained, considering that lighting expenditures are actually higher than the energy consumption itself. So lighting does have a large impact for most commercial and residential, for that matter, owners of buildings, and how that impacts their energy costs. So also when you think about this, and we talked about the performance of lighting. So on this left quadrant, other chart, I should say, you're looking at lumens per watt. And this is a history of fluorescent tubes and fluorescent technology from the inception of when fluorescents were created on up to about 2020. And as what you notice, there were some gains over, the late 1900s, and it's flattened out since 2000. So really what we're seeing here in terms of lumens per watt and performance, that fluorescent technology has really bottomed out. It can't get any better than it is today. So what we want to do now is to say, all right, how is LED lighting fixture efficiency versus fluorescent? Since 2000, look at this. It's like a hockey stick. It is dramatically increased. So what we're looking at today is a much, much more robust light source in terms of how it really transfers the input energy into visible light. And you look at from 2000, we were at somewhere probably around 50 lumens per watt. And now approaching 2020, we're approaching 180 plus lumens per watt. So that really just demonstrates how effective LED light source in terms of utilization of creating light out of the energy that's inputted into a light source. So that's quite a dramatic uptick, and shows why LEDs are really becoming a more prominent light source in the marketplace. So then we look at performance of LEDs, and I'll just use fluorescent and metal halide as a standard, and you can even see high pressure sodium on this chart as well for some outdoor. And what we're talking about is lumen maintenance and lifetime. So with fluorescent metal halide, average rated life is rated at when it reaches 50% of the population are expected to have completely failed, right? So that's when a lighting company would say that's the mean lumens, and they're measured at 40% rated lamp life. And so when you think about that in terms of LEDs, when LEDs are rated, they're measured at 70% of the initial lumen output, oftentimes plus, over 100,000 hours. So immediately there's a huge increase just because of where we're measuring lumen performance. And then the mean lumens are often measured at even 90% of lumen output, even better light. So when you see the red chart of LED lighting here, and you look at rated lumen output at 100%, obviously everyone starts at the same point, but metal halide is notorious for dropping off really quickly. Fluorescence a little bit better, but you can see once you get out to over about 15,000 hours into 20,000 hours, fluorescent lumens just drop like a rock. And many of you may have seen that. Even though a fluorescent lamp is still operating, you're not getting the light output that you had at the first, 5,000 or 10,000 hours of life. So then you look at LEDs, all right, and you see where, let's say, even at 20,000 hours, and you keep continuing, it is a much longer lumen performance over its rated life. So you're getting more light out of that light source for a longer period of time. So again, that really demonstrates the benefits of LEDs on, number one, in terms of their rated lifetime, which is extraordinarily longer than traditional light sources, but also their lumen performance. So really, if you add all this up and you talk about LEDs in terms of where lighting and that this is a sustainable choice, right? And if you look at lighting in terms of the output of carbon dioxide relative to all the other energy sources in a building, so lighting is an area where your customers can have a large impact on their bottom line in terms of dollars, but also in terms of sustainability and lowering carbon dioxide. So, why would you want to really pitch an LED retrofit to your clients? And the focus of this program today is predominantly for 2x2s and 2x4 fluorescents in ceilings of commercial space, which is the predominant installed light source and luminaire source. So really, the one thing that most of the LED retrofits will do is they'll utilize the existing fluorescent troffer pan. So the good news about that is you don't have to throw that unit away. You can retrofit it. It's also, in most of the areas in the country, it's a non-code triggering event in most areas. So this means you don't have to go through a whole code inspection, and we can move pretty quickly by using that existing troffer pan. The other thing that most of these retrofits will do is they don't open nor disturb the ceiling plenum, obviously because you're not taking the pan out of the ceiling. So that eliminates any contaminants, dirt, and such, and that's also why this is generally considered a non-code triggering event. It's easier overall. The lower install time versus a troffer install. I was just at Light Fair a couple weeks ago. I talked to a lot of electrical contractors, and general consensus is that a troffer install will take 30 to 40 minutes, 45 minutes depending on the situation, and most retrofit kits are well under a 10-minute install. So overall, it's just an easier installation. Also, you want to look for most of what I'll talk about in this program is really a retrofit kit, which is a total updating of the ceiling. So if you look at this picture to the right, you can see an original parabolic, or even you could say prismatic. Then there's a new LED troffer. A new LED retrofit kit looks exactly like a new LED troffer. So putting in a light source that updates just the luminaire, whether it was a parabolic lens or prismatic, it still looks like a old light source, right? The ceiling looks kind of old. The system performance, you're going to get, we talked about lumens per watt. The efficiencies are amazing. Color quality, LEDs in terms of color performance, most fluorescents you'd find are 80-plus color rendering. You even, with LEDs, you're reaching high 80s and into the 90s. Also, your warranties are much longer, longer lifetimes, as we talked about, in terms of lumen maintenance, as well as general bumper-to-bumper, if you will, with a new driver, which is, the LED term for a ballast. As a total system, the warranties are much better than traditional fluorescent systems that are out there today. The other thing that happens with most of this is you're reducing waste from install. You're not having to throw away all those pans, and thus also reduces the overall cost on your installation. And as we talked about in the beginning of the program, better controllability. You're able to dim most of these units much better, 0 to 10 volt dimming or step dimming, and basically able to control that light because it's digital light in a much better fashion than in traditional fluorescent technology. Let's see. Okay. Typical LED retrofit applications. What we're really seeing here is many times is your education, a lot of schools, obviously high schools, colleges, universities. Healthcare is a real hot spot because of that plenum issue, not opening up the ceiling, especially in patient areas where contamination, if any of you have done healthcare work, you have to really cordon off the area, make sure that dust and dirt are not infecting the space, and really healthcare is a real hot spot. Large projects that you're focusing on that have a lot of number of units, it's a faster install time. So it's easier for you and your crews to get the work done and hopefully bolster your margins because you're able to do it much more efficiently and effectively. That ceiling plenum issue I talked about, especially in healthcare, some education, older schools, the same type of thing. But also what we talked about is really desiring that new, clean-looking ceiling. And we'll show some images as we get into the presentation of what that really looks like. So that improved aesthetics, it doesn't look like a retrofit. It really looks like this is a new lighting system, even though you've converted the existing pan that's been installed. So when we really talk about lighting in general and LED retrofits, there's really 4 key pillars that I always talk about as a great lighting project or a job that your customers will be pleased with after you've long gone and you've done the work. If you take these 4 attributes and you build this into your project, into your installation on your lighting, you'll really save your clients money, and you'll also have happy customers, right? So the first is meeting target light levels. And, you know, we've all done different jobs and been in different projects, and, you know, sometimes there's too much light, and in fact, I would imagine that in a lot of installations, especially in retrofits, back in the T8 days of transforming a T12 to a T8 and retrofitting is overlight, right, and too much lighting. And so you want to make sure that your delivered foot candles are right on task at the light levels that are desired. So that's critically important. And as I mentioned, and we'll talk about controllability of LEDs, having a dimming system and with LEDs, you can achieve that. We're even looking at some LED technologies, obviously, that can even change color temperature with the same fixture. So there's all sorts of ability to manage the light levels and the quality of light. Number 2, and I mentioned this earlier, is really LED technology delivers light in the most efficient and effective manner with any technology in lighting today. So when you're looking at converting input watts to lumens to foot candles, nothing beats a light-emitting diode. Obviously, that's the future, and that's why it's overtaking the incumbent traditional technologies. And then number 3, people like higher color rendering. They like to be able to see things that look the way they expect them to look, that the colors pop and that it's vibrant. It's also easier on the eyes in terms of working, you know, on a page and looking at the contrast of things as you're doing work or task. And then lastly, I've mentioned it a couple times, is the ability to automatically control light. And that is really using either motion sensing, daylight harvesting, and dimming controls. So when you combine all of these 4 pillars, your lighting project is going to be much more successful. Your customers are going to be much more happy. And overall, that gives you repeat clientele, and it gives you happy customers, right? So if it weren't even LED lighting, I would still say these are the 4 things you need to think about. But obviously, with our retrofit units that you get today, you're able to do this and deliver this to your customer. So what to look for in general. So with LEDs and what's going on in the marketplace, there is a group called the Design Light Consortium, and what happens is in all LED lighting, for the most part, sometimes it's managed by the Energy Star, but DLC is a grouping of 82 electric utilities across the country, and they basically qualify what LED luminaires and retrofits are approved for incentives at your local utilities, right? So they are the governing body, and what I would suspect and ask for you to look for on any project is make sure it's a DLC approved product. Some products are more efficient than others, so you'll have a DLC rating that's a standard, and then lately, as of April this year, you're looking at new DLC 4.0, and there's a DLC Premium. So Premium is going to get you the most efficiency that DLC puts in a rating on, and there's set standards. So for retrofit kits, it's a 125 LPW is premium. Standard, I believe, is around a 105 to 110 LPW for standard DLC with a retrofit. So again, make sure you look for a DLC qualified product and also UL approved product. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But really, this is talking about reducing your overall paybacks for your customers. So the ROI, most of the time that you'll be seeing now is 2-year or under paybacks for these types of projects. It also gives confidence to you and your customer base that these are approved products, right? And really, what the environment's looking for is really the industry's trying to achieve greater energy efficiency and performance. And DLC is really the third-party nonprofit that's governing all of this. So now let's dive into what are your major 3 options as it relates to a 2x2, a 2x4 troffer. And as many of you have probably seen, there's many LED tubes out there, and they're pontificating a lot of different things about their promise and what we can deliver and all this good news, right? And I say to you, this is the LED overpromise. Beware. There's a lot of third-party manufacturers out there, and they're saying a lot of things. So my recommendation is make sure you qualify who you're buying it from, that it's a major reputable manufacturer, and just be careful of the claims. Be careful of the lifetime claims. Be careful of the lumen claims and the performance on LED tubes specifically. The one thing that you more than would realize is obviously you're either driving this through an existing ballast that's designed for a fluorescent system, or you're direct wiring to the mains wiring, right? And my recommendation is the more reliable part is the direct mains wired versions. Basically because you're driving a light source directly into that tube. It has its own driver built into the tube, and it's basically designed to run and operate on that type of a main system. Running anything that's not designed on a ballast, especially a fluorescent ballast, which drive a lot of hard current to start a fluorescent lamp, aren't necessarily well designed for long-term reliability on an LED tube. So, those are the things to be thinking about there. The other thing is, as I mentioned, basically bulbs, lamp tubes will have a shorter lifetime and warranties than other LED solutions. Just for that very reason, it's a less robust system just in terms of its design. Again, first cost is generally lower, lifetime cost is generally higher. The other thing that happens is when you retrofit an LED with a tube, whether a fluorescent troffer with an LED tube, is again, the troffer looks like a parabolic or prismatic, right? You're getting the energy benefits, you're getting a little bit probably better lifetimes, but it still looks pretty much the same. And make sure you look for UL and DLC approval on whatever system you're buying. So my only comment is on lead tubes is first cost may be lower, total lifetime cost, you're still going to have to get up on a ladder, replace lamp tubes, and or if you're going through an existing ballast, many times there's going to be other ballast issues that you're going to have to contend with. All right? So the next option that you're seeing in the marketplace are what we call a light bar and LED driver kit. So this is the next step up from just a tube replacement. The good news about a LED bar and LED driver kit is that it really has excellent color performance and lifetime, much better than a tube because you have, first of all, an external driver that's designed for the system. So that new driver is an LED driver. It's designed to an LED light bar, and those light bars can deliver much more robust light over lifetime, handle thermals and heat much better, and just perform overall better. Longer lifetimes and warranties, many of these products are 7 years to 10 years. So again, that will outlive your lead tube solution that we just talked about. And then also these units have emergency backup options. So if you have an EB situation, you're still able to use an EB version on these drivers that are part of a solution. The only thing, again, is this still does look like a fluorescent troffer, right? It's still going through a parabolic or prismatic lens, so it doesn't look new. And again, look for UL and DLC approval. This unit happens, the image here is our Cree upgrade kit, our UR, again, light bar driver with a 7-year limited warranty. So next, this is my bias. I think this is the best way to go, especially where price points are today, and that is really putting in a troffer retrofit kit. The performance relative to tubes and light bars is excellent. It matches all of the existing LED troffers if you were putting in a brand new troffer. So the issue here is that what we're really providing is basically a new fluorescent, or rather a new LED fluorescent replacement without changing the pan, right? So this is a total change without changing the pan, and it looks like a brand new ceiling. Higher lumen performances, longer lifetimes, longer warranties, 5 years plus, and again, it looks like a new troffer. The ceiling looks brand new. So when your customer comes in after you've done the project and you've updated that, they'll go, wow. And I'll show you a picture here in a minute, and I'll show you that wow factor that I'm talking about. And again, dimming control, both 0 to 10 volt dimming on the current driver, and this is a brand new driver, by the way, totally integrated unit. And on our particular unit, the EB, the emergency backup, is actually factory installed. So that, again, is more time saving for you in the marketplace when you're up on the ladder actually putting these into the ceiling. You're not having to handle that emergency backup as a separate wiring. It's all pre-wired. Dimming controls is as good as a brand new unit, a troffer, I should say. And again, look for UL and DLC approval. On our unit here, which we're showing, which is DLC Premium, in many instances, on average, we're probably seeing around $40 in higher cost of energy markets for rebate. You're getting another $10 to $20 for DLC Premium. So then you're starting to look at a $40, $50, $60 incentive on a rebate for a retrofit kit that really takes the cost down fast, and it also improves the payback timing. The other thing you want to look for is easy install, right? This is, you all know it. You guys do this day in and day out. You know what it takes up on the ladder. This is our kit's a 4-piece kit. So all the kits have different designs, different ways to be installed, but really the ease of install and putting this in is where that time saving comes in retrofitting that current fluorescent pan. So again, all those performance issues I talked about, but also look for an easy install, which allows you to move quickly through your project, especially for those larger projects like schools and hospitals. So here is actually one of our units that I did on an early project at an office space, and I really want you to take a look at these pictures. I call this, you know, kind of the wow factor, right? The improved appearance in terms of better color and no cave effect. So if you look at the first circle and you look at the wall under the parabolic on the left on the before, and you look at the wall, and this was actually later in the day. This was a late afternoon install. It was starting to get dark. You can just see the light in terms of how it's distributed on the wall and how even that is. Then you take a look at the refrigerator. It looks like that refrigerator probably died 10 years ago before, but now you look at it, the color, it's color correct. All the colors are much more vibrant. You look at the dividing panel. You look at the filing cabinet on the right. You can just see much better visual clarity, and these were not touched up at all. I actually just took them on my phone. But you can look at the ceiling, and this was the ceiling grid that I took pictures of it, both lit and unlit. And the way this thing fits and finish into the ceiling, as you can tell, it looks like a brand new ceiling. It made that old tired look kind of go away, and this really pleases your customers and really makes it a great lighting upgrade and great experience. So I did want to share you those before and after pictures. So, you know, let's face it, there's lead troffers, troffer retrofits aren't the only retrofits available. And obviously you've seen all sorts of different lead lamp types, you know, A19s, PAR 30s, BRs, candles, PAR 20s, PAR 30s, PAR 40s, all available to replace incandescents, halogens, and CFLs. And again, with better light quality, better dimming, better warranty, and last longer. And then also your downlights, right? So instead of fluorescent and halogen, and especially in higher ceilings, you can actually pull the guts out of the can and put in a downlight LED retrofit. These are two of our products, a CR6 and an LR. Again, depending on what kind of lumen performance you're looking for, ceiling heights, you know, saving up to 85% energy, and then lifetime, you know, just blows the socks off of having to go up on a ladder and change a fluorescent or a halogen. And then outdoor, crazy enough, you look at those acorns out in the architectural, there's all sorts of products that snap into post tops to replace HID lighting. And again, it maintains the current form, so you're not upsetting the architectural look of the old acorn. And again, we're putting in LED technology as the guts to replace those types of units. So even though today's program was really focusing on retrofitting 2x2 or 2x4 fluorescent troughers with LEDs, I wanted to make sure that you all know that obviously there's other LED retrofits that are available in the marketplace. So really now's the time to look at and converting, you know, all those fluorescent fixtures out there. And if you have customers that are really looking at, you know, what's the fastest payback, what's going to be the energy savings, as we talked about, the immediate environmental benefit in terms of the lifetime performance, the energy savings, zero to low maintenance over the life of the fixture. This really does improve that labor rate, right? And really better light and better control and improved productivity in the workspace. As I talked about, look for reputable manufacturers. Make sure that the claims can be backed by a company who's financially solvent, right? Also, you want to look for leading warranties. You also want to look for that easy install. That's your time up on the ladder and how easy it is for you to do the work. You want durability. You want a system that is well designed, making sure that it's UL and Design Light Consortium approved. And you're really looking for that high lumen per watt and that color rendering balance that really allows you to deliver a really strong lighting project. So that's kind of it for the program. Tim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. That was a great presentation, Eric. Thanks. So we do have a few questions to get through, and I wanted to open it up to the rest of the attendees. You know, feel free to submit any questions in the Q&A box, and we'll see if Eric can get to them. So I just want to jump right into what type of dimming systems do LED retrofit kits operate with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that question quite often. Most of the products you're going to see in the market are either 0 to 10 volt dimming down to around 5%, and or step dim, right? You have different step dimming type levels. The thing I would say that they will, most LED systems will operate with most standard commercial lighting dimming control systems, okay? The one thing I would recommend is that you ensure that you check on that manufacturer's website. They will list the compatibility for your current dimming or your dimming and control system. Probably on LED lamps, it's probably the more variance and variability, because a lot of those types of controls may not be a standard building control system. They might be a wall dimmer or something of that nature. But still, most of the technologies today have adapted to trailing edge and leading edge type dimming systems and should be compatible. But the thing I will stress is to make sure you check the manufacturer's website, and they'll list those dimming systems that are compatible.
Great. Next question. What about emergency backup options?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a little bit, Tim. That most of the units out there will not, I will say, not lead tubes, right? Lead tubes, you're depending upon what is already installed in the ceiling, because you're either going to a direct mains voltage or you're running it through the existing ballast, which is a little bit, you know, this is that area where I get uncomfortable in terms of how reliable that performance is, especially on emergency backup. On the lead bars, like our UR unit, we have EB units that are designed for that. And then on all of the retrofit kits parts, if you will. They do have EB as an alternate option. You'll have to order those EB units separately, but they're designed as an EB. The thing I did mention about ours is it's factory installed. Not all of our competitors are a factory installed option, so do check that. But that's really the differences between LED lamps, light bars, and retrofit troffer kits.
All right, next question is, what are some of the average utility incentives on LED retrofit kits?
Yeah, I think I did mention this a little bit. It all depends where you are in the country, right? We have some utilities, especially in the Northeast and California and in the central part like Chicago and Minnesota, where there's higher rebates and more activity by the local utility groups. On average, when we look at like the Northeast and the West Coast, we're probably about at a $40 per unit base, with that DLC standard premium can get up to about $20. You will see in other parts of the country where energy costs are low, there's either a very minimal rebate or no rebate at all. So again, what I would do is, first of all, make sure when you're looking at a retrofit unit, see that it's DLC approved. Is it DLC standard or is it DLC premium, number one? Then go to your local utility, and most of them have listed all the incentives, and maybe some of you are already aware of that. If you're, let's say in the San Francisco Bay Area working with PG&E, where you can go find all the incentives and what the rates are for those particular, what we would call a prescriptive rebate. A prescriptive is where you would just give straight dollars for the paperwork submitted. There's other custom rebates which look at the total watts reduced, right? And they'll look at all of that energy reduced over the total project. So again, make sure you check DLC and that unit's approved and where it fits, and then look with your local utility on their website to see what are those rebates in your given marketplace.
All right, so since you just touched on DLC, one of the questions was, when looking at LED tubes, should we be okay if the product is DLC premium listed? I think they're just looking for general, is that a good product? Yeah,
DLC doesn't, they do look at testing, they do look at performance. And I would say that, and I'll just say this, I would say yes overall. However, I would still make sure that the supplier in question is a supplier that is going to be around, for a period of time, right? So a rebate over 5 years and a supplier isn't in the business anymore, it's pretty hard to go back after them if they're not in the marketplace any longer. So overall, I would say yes, DLC and UL obviously are the key critical components of a quality system. But again, look for, beware of overstatements, over promises.
Gotcha. All right. Next question. Is there more information available regarding the CO2 output of lighting? He was mostly wondering if the emissions was against the manufacturing process or during operation.
Well, I think there's probably two ways to look at, obviously, CO2 reduction, and obviously there's as the listener was mentioning, there's the production processes that a company goes through, and then there's their operations of the building, right? So those are two different types of reporting systems or structures. Pretty much the Department of Energy and their buildings program does have some pretty good information and backup documentation. So if you go to DOE.gov and you look for the Building Efficiencies Program, those folks are really, the governing bodies who really do a lot of research as it relates specifically to, say, lighting or other building technologies and what those impacts are. That's where those charts came from, where the Building Efficiencies Group with the Department of Energy.
All right, next question. Do we require some sort of sticker or notice if we remove the ballast on a 2x2 or 2x4?
Good question. Yes, we supply a UL. There's a UL sticker that will go in on any of the when you change the driver, disconnect the driver. So make sure that is a part of your supply package in your kit, right? That sticker then goes on that fixture and basically says that UL has approved this as a converted fixture and is now abiding by that retrofitted performance characteristics, right?
Gotcha. Next question is there any surge suppression on this, or is it needed to be installed to protect the product?
Well, if you're looking at a light bar or with a driver, and you're looking at a retrofit kit, the Troffer kit, those drivers are all designed to appropriately deliver the right amount of current over the lifetime of the product, right? So that's what that functionality does. When you go to a direct mains voltage on a tube, you still have a minor, small microcircuit driver in the tubes themselves. They have to have that. You're not just running straight current into an LED tube, even if it's a direct mains voltage. So what I was trying to say is those bigger drivers that you saw pictures of, at least in the lead bar and in the top of our retrofit kit, are actual drivers that you would find on a normal Troffer, if you will, right? So those are all designed to manage surge suppression, variances in power quality. So not all power is equal across the country. You're getting a lot of places in the market where you get a high spikes and drops in power. But most of those units are at least ours, are from a 120 on up to 277, and in Canada we even operate on 347. So those are pretty robust systems. The lead tubes, they're designed to do that. Again, I don't believe, and that's why the lifetime ratings are usually lower, they're not as robust.
All right, next question. Why not just buy a new Troffer? Is the price saving that much better? Labor is close.
Yep, I think this person's asking a very interesting question. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, prices are coming down, right? And in many instances, they're getting closer. Not all instances is a retrofit the right choice versus a new Troffer. The biggest issues that I find are the ceiling plenum issues, right? There are some areas where you don't want to open up the ceiling, and that's where a retrofit kit is more desirable. The other part of that is, especially say in California, is it code triggering. So once you change out a Troffer in California, if you don't have a lighting control system, you're going to have to install that. That is a code triggering occurrence. So the main differences here are plenum issues, speed in terms of how big is the project, and is it easier to install a retrofit kit, and then also is it code triggering. So those are the real three issues that I say or ask, versus a new standard Troffer, right? So that's a good point, and price points, as I mentioned, are coming down, and the variances is as large as it had been.
Okay, we've got two more, so if anybody else wants to submit questions, go ahead and do that. It's in the Q&A box, should be on your screen. So the next question is, what is the availability of this information for use in sales? Photo comparisons, info and rebates through, say, Duke Power, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that at least for us on our website, we provide a lot of documentation, downloadable install instructions. We have download videos on install. We have all sorts of information, and then also doing, like the slide that I showed in terms of showing a customer, the difference in terms of look. We also have demo units, which most manufacturers, I do believe, also provide. So if you talk to your local distributor, your local lighting agent, or need some assistance, they will have those kinds of pieces of literature if you don't find it online, or the demo tools to actually come out and bring out a Troffer retrofit unit that they can actually illuminate and show the quality of it.
All right. Next question is, I'm in the process of doing a lighting retrofit. My supplier quoted me on new fixtures for the Troffers. The warehouse we are going to install new high bay ones. How do I get the retro kit? I'm in Washington State.
Okay, so I heard two things. I heard high bay. Can you read that question again? So I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the process of doing a lighting retrofit. My supplier quoted me on new fixtures for the troffers. The warehouse, we are going to install new high bay ones. How do I get the retro kit? I'm in Washington State. So I guess the question is, we're going to install new high bay retro in the warehouse, and they want to know how to get retro kits. Yeah,
so I guess I'm hearing two things here. It depends on your ceiling heights in this particular. When as soon as you say warehouse to me, my brain goes, all right, 15, 20 feet, 25 feet, right, in terms of what type of lighting source would be installed there. So a retrofit kit in that instance may work, but I would say that the lumen output, most of the retrofit kits that you're going to see in this troffer type of a unit are probably 5,000 lumen. You might find some 6,000 lumen, but even so, if that's the case, you're going to go to a different light source going into, and we do have LED solutions. Not so sure that they'd be a retrofit kit. They'd probably be a new medium bay or a high bay or a low bay type LED solution. Don't know if that answers the question. If the person wants to email me, Tim, and we can provide them my email, I'll be more than happy to try to ferret that question out a little bit better.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Everybody who is on this webinar should have my email address since I'm the host. So they can feel free to email me, and I can connect them if that's probably the simplest way to go.
Yeah, I don't know if I answered it correctly, but I don't think I have enough information. So.
Gotcha. Well, the next question might be a good one to segue into is what spaces or projects are poor candidates for retrofits?
Yeah, I would say, I don't think there's a poor. I think the benefits of LED lighting, and I was a fluorescent guy for 15 years. Okay, so I mean, I know the technology and I know the benefits of LEDs, right? So to me, the performance characteristics that we talked about in the program today really, from a performance standpoint, just really outperform lumen maintenance, which we talked about, lifetime, controllability, light quality. I get the benefit of working under LED lighting every day, and basically our workspace, we drop the energy. We're only operating at about 30% of the total light output. And, from a working perspective, just the light uniformity and your strain on your eyes, the benefits just from just being a happier worker in a space really is improved. The glare on my screen, on my computer, my eye strain, all those kinds of things. And then obviously we have a lot of wireless technologies, and we even have the ability to control individual groupings of fixtures, right? So it's all about user preference, and LED lighting really performs much higher, much better than traditional incumbent technologies as it relates to all of that. So I really don't think there's a bad project. I mean, people look at the financials, and as I said, the financials have come down so extreme over the last couple of years that, to me, the 2-year payback or below should be pretty easy.
So a couple questions back when we were talking about the warehouse and the high bays. You mentioned you had videos on a website. Do you know the URL right off?
Not offhand. On the CRE website, we have our videos on the install, and there's a promotional video that actually shows 2 contractors doing 5 troffers in a race. We call it Retrofit race. I was there. We just timed it and spaced it all out. But anyway, I think, in a warehouse, we have a lot of case studies on different LED solutions. So if you do go on our website, you can go into industrial warehouse as an application, and there'll be different case studies there with different product solutions. So if it's not a retrofit troffer per se, that listener can probably look as an application and look at case studies, and then we could get them engaged with an agent or distributor to help them.
Gotcha. Okay. So next question. What's the ceiling in lumens per watt for LEDs? I think you showed a chart that by 2020 we should be at 180.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So,
It keeps going up, right? So it depends on the fixture, and it depends on what the performance of that fixture is rated for, right? So you're looking at LEDs. The biggest thing that's been in a reducer of performance is thermals. So LEDs, you've got to get rid of heat. They perform better in cooler environments. So when you go up into higher ceilings, high temperatures and ambient is going to cause light performance issues and lifetime issues. So a lot of thermal issues around it. But anyway, to get to that answer, right now we have troughers that are operating at 140 to 150 LPW. So those are for just standard office environments. And then we have other systems that are either for like a high bay and or even exterior that are operating even higher. So yeah, the LPWs also is about what we call remote phosphor technology and the amount of light that you can get out of an LED, right? So we have LED arrays and thermal performance and phosphor coatings that go over the top of an LED that are allowing it to perform at higher levels. So every year to 2 years, you're seeing higher performing lumens per watt LED systems, and that allows your trougher or your design luminaire to perform at a higher standard just because the guts, right? So between the driver, the optics, and the LEDs themselves, you're getting to those higher LPWs.
All right. So you mentioned some products typically have a 2-year payback. Is there something that I can show my customers that proves this claim?
Well, basically, you have to look at your existing system, right? First, you got to do a good assessment of what's installed. What's the performance? What's the input watts? What's the lifetime? What the amount of energy you're putting in there, and what you're paying per kilowatt hour, right? So there's your baseline. So then you say, all right, what's my net cost of installing and the materials of the new system, and what's my energy savings and what's my lifetime savings, right? So you do an analysis both on the performance, on the energy saved, and then we also look at the maintenance savings, right? So you look at that over a chart, and you plot it out versus current versus what is the new, and you do the math. And you know, we can help do that math, but you have to input your own personal numbers because we don't know that cost offhand. And then you can do the math, and you can say, on average, I'm going to pay for this system in 2 years, and every year after that is savings, right? So if the system has a 10-year warranty on it, and I pay it back in 2 years, I've got guaranteed another 8 years of savings at, let's say, 12 cents, 15 cents per kilowatt hour. I'm running my lights 10 hours a day, you know, what, 4,000 some hours a year. So you have to do all that math so you do the calculations correctly. And then you plug in the LED source, what the reductions are. And in many instances, we're seeing reductions of anywhere from 40 to 60% over an incumbent technology. If you put controls on it, you're going up to 80, 85%. So, you know, again, it's your invested cost, your savings, your lifetime over the maintenance over the lifetime, and where that break-even point and where your paybacks are hitting. So those are the numbers that you have to plug in. If you Google that, you probably will come up with some equations, the math to where to plug it in. You know, if not, ensure that you get in touch with one of our distributors or a lighting agent, a local CRE rep, and they can help you out.
Okay. I've got 2 more, and then I think we'll probably close it out. So this next one is, not that there are a lot in my buildings, but plenum return on fixtures. Would the retro work on them?
Are we talking about air handling? Is that what the question is?
That's all there is.
All right, read it again, I'm sorry.
Not that there are a lot in my buildings, but plenum return on fixtures, question mark. Would the retro
plenum
work
return. On them? I guess they're talking about air handling systems, Tim, would be my guess. We don't have a solution right now, but if the unit retrofits the unit itself and the air returns are still there and separate from the troffer itself, I would say yes. If not, we're looking at least ourselves, and there may be some competitors out there that might have some solutions, that air handling units are, in some commercial spaces, are built in to the troffer design. So those are usually air intake systems to go into the HVAC, and I think that's what the listeners discussing here. We don't have that solution right now, but it would. I would actually try to get a demo kit or get a agent or a distributor or a local CRE rep out to it and see if it would work or not.
All right, and the final question is it's about collaboration. So what lighting control products does CRE support? There may have been a recent collaboration with Lutron for an LED control panel.
Sure. We have a couple different solutions. We have a control solution called SmartCast. That is a wireless control system, and that is a system I was suggesting on the call earlier. That is basically a wireless that allows you to configure groupings of fixtures and allows you to control them through a handheld, right? Without a wall control. It's basically a wireless. We do have a product called Eco-enabled, and that is with a Lutron dimming system that are actually embedded into our fixtures. So those are designed to work specifically with a Lutron Eco-enabled system. Now, the rest of our systems, because of the way the drivers are designed, and they're 0 to 10 volt, and they operate on multi-level systems, they're pretty much compatible with everything that's out there from a building lighting control standpoint. So the caller may be mentioning the Lutron Eco-enabled system as part of our portfolio offering.
All right, fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and close it out. On behalf of Electrical Contractor and CRE, I want to thank everyone once again for attending. I also want to thank you, Eric, for an excellent presentation. It was super informative. And I want to ask everybody to be on the lookout for the recording of this event, which you'll be notified about in an email. I'll send that out to you in the next couple of days. And I'm going to go ahead and end the event, and we hope to see everybody in a future webinar. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.